This is next petition. This is petition 112 by Ricardo Bravo Elvira on behalf of Plataforma de Afectados por la Ocupación on the suspension of eviction procedures. Mr. Bravo's in the room, and you're most welcome to take the floor. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Ricardo Bravo. I'm a spokesperson on behalf of those affected by occupation in Spain. I've lived in a building which was full of squatters. My colleague is Pilar Martinez. She's also suffered this type of squatters with serious consequences. Now, we are affected by this, and we'd like to thank the members of the European Parliament for their presence here today. And we'd also like to thank the Petitions Committee for giving us this opportunity to speak today. We would not be able to be here without the legal support of the legal chamber of Barcelona. Now, this is a civilian organization. Thousands of people affected by squatters. We are working families, and we only have one or possibly two homes that we own. We are not and do not belong to any political party, and we belong to no political party at all. The reason for this petition is because of the very serious lack of protection for those people suffering from squatters, because of the adoption of the law, which has been extended several times. This is the law RD 11/2020, and this is for people who are vulnerable, or protects vulnerable families, or families that are not really that vulnerable. So this means a voluntary way of not paying your rent, and it is almost the formal way of taking over a building and without the authorization of the owner. The measures of this royal decree make it very difficult or impossible to make sure that persons living illegally in one of these homes can be evicted. So we call upon the public administration for their responsibility, that is to offer social housing to vulnerable families, and they're deriving the responsibility to the owners of homes. And therefore, it is a continuous infringement of the protection of the owners of buildings. It is also the lack of protection for the owner of a building, and this has also been covered by the European Human Rights Court on the 13th of December 2018. So there is no legal protection, and small owners are defenseless and get no compensation. There's a lack of dialogue by the government because it only knows about the situation through the media or because of a debate in the Spanish Parliament. And 3 years and 25 requests for us to ask to meet the platform. We're waiting for a dialogue to start. The reality of this measure is because of the lack of social housing. And basically the government is forcing this upon those they think are responsible for the crisis of housing crisis in our country, that is large banking corporations or financial institutions. And at the end of the day, 90% of the rental market is shouldered by small owners, and they have to proceed to very long legal processes. They need to pay the expense of lawyers and prosecutors, and very often they need to cover the expenses apart from the squatters destroying your home, and justice is never on time. Your honourable members, we are not a bank. Honourable members, why doesn't the government listen to us? We are the victims of this type of occupation, of tenant occupation. How much longer is this going to be covered by the Spanish legislation and protected? Why are we second-class citizens? We are older people who try to cover the costs of their care homes, people who have moved to other provinces because of the crisis, who now have a home and are renting. So somebody who received this by way of an inheritance. So the responsibility of supporting vulnerable families is on the shoulders of these small owners. We'd like to ask you to continue keeping our petition open, to carry out an analysis and to see what the repercussion is of this particular royal decree, especially in the light of the violation of Article 27 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Thank you. Can I now give the floor to the European Commission? Please, Mrs. Femke Grimmel, you have the floor.
Thank you. Democracy, the rule of law, and fundamental rights are founding values of the European project. And the European Commission promotes and protects fundamental rights by ensuring that all legislative, policy and administrative measures falling within EU competences comply with the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, including also the right to property, which forms an integral part of these values and is enshrined in Article 17 of the Charter. We know that several governments took emergency measures to address the health crisis caused by the outbreak of the coronavirus, and the Commission has made clear from the outset that the response to this crisis must fully respect of fundamental rights and principles and values as set out in the treaties. Emergency measures must be limited to what is necessary, strictly proportionate, clearly restricted in time, in line with constitutional enshrined safeguards as well as European and international standards. The European Commission is closely monitoring the emergency measures taken by the member states, including in Spain, and their impact in particular on fundamental rights and on EU law. And the Commission is, of course, also aware of the situation in Spain in relation to the occupation and squatters. However, with regard to the alleged violation of the right to property, it is important to recall that the Charter does not apply to all and every situation of an alleged violation. The Charter applies to member states only when they are implementing EU law, and in this case, it's merely a situation of national law, so it's really for the Spanish government to ensure that the obligations regarding fundamental rights, as they are resulting from international agreements and their international constitution and legislation, that those fundamental rights are respected. So the Commission therefore advises actually to keep on bringing this case to the attention of national authorities, including the judiciary, and potentially, as I heard also, you mentioned the European Court of Human Rights, to keep on bringing complaints to the attention of the European Court of Human Rights so that it can be dealt with also at national level and in practice. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. So we'll hear from the parliamentary groups. Mr. Hoyde from the EPP, please.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Me gusta.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by welcoming Pilar Martinez and Ricardo Bravo, who are representing the platform of people affected by squatting. From what we've just heard, these people are not part of what people call vulture funds or large property groups. They're not associated with large banks or financial institutions. They are victims, and that is why I would like to express my solidarity with the serious breaches of their rights which are being committed in Spain. And I'd like to thank them for coming along today after everything that they have been through, and for talking to all of the political groups who will listen to them in Spain. So thank you to you, Pilar and Ricardo. Thanks to you, now in Europe, we can hear firsthand how thousands of small property owners are suffering because of squatting in Spain. All of this is in the face of the indifference of the Sánchez government that have even demonized landlords and stood by those who are failing to obey the law. Because I'm sorry to say that in my country, the right to private property is not always guaranteed. Now, this is a right which is set out in Article 33 of the Constitution. In Germany, France, Italy, Denmark, or Sweden, to give you some examples, if evictions can take place quickly, sometimes in less than 48 hours, in Spain, it can take 18 months plus. We have 43 new occupations a day, so the number of people suffering from this situation has shot up over recent years. Initiatives like the latest housing law have only served to give more guarantees to squatters instead of helping the victims. The government talks about vulnerable families when they're really referring to a professional organised squatting movement, which is very damaging to small property owners. At the same time, they are ignoring the victims. For the Spanish government, squatters are just taking properties that belong to big banks or landowners, and that's just not the reality. And today we have with us two people who have demonstrated that it's not like that. In the Partido Popular, we would like the Spanish law to be similar to that in neighbouring countries when it comes to dealing with this issue. We would suggest a maximum 48 hours for evictions where there are houses that have been illegally taken over, but Sánchez and his associates have voted against. Our party is committed to providing a home and decent living conditions to the most vulnerable families. This is something which should be entirely compatible with respect for private property. There are people who have bought a house having worked very hard to save up, or people who have inherited a house from parents or grandparents. There is no single type of victim of squatting. The victim might be women, young people, retired people, married couples with children. All kinds of people are affected. We shouldn't be deceived by the manipulation of the Spanish government. There are small property owners. Sánchez has turned his back on them, but in our party, we would like to offer them our full support. We will do everything that we can, both in Brussels and in Spain, to uphold your rights and to ensure that justice is done so that you can take back your properties. I'd like to close by calling on the Commission to be sensitive to this issue, which is a problem in my country. In the Partido Popular, we are in favour of this petition being kept open. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.